Okie dokie, folks, and welcome back to Monday Night Shaw right here on Love Wrestling. I am Kyle Shaw, aka the Canadian Goose, and joining me this week is Louise McCormack, who is a ladies boxer from the world of professional boxing. And I think that it's pretty awesome because normally we have wrestlers on here, but today we're going to have somebody from a different combat sport. How are you doing, Louise?
Good. How are you?
I'm okay. Oh, is it amateur boxing? I'm sorry. Is there? Let's start right there. What's the difference between amateur boxing and professional boxing?
Well, for one, you can't get paid, and in amateur boxing, and the round lengths are a little bit different. And in professional boxing, you don't wear headgear; you just wear mouth guard. In amateur boxing, they're very worried about safety, so you wear headgear and mouth guard and protective gear and all the rest of it. And in amateur, it's only 3 rounds instead of 12 or 10.
Oh,
So
okay.
see a
How
difference.
long have you been boxing for?
About 4 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then I've heard that you've won some championships and whatnot.
Yeah, so I'm a three-time international champion. I've won two West Coast Wonder Woman championships, which are international tournaments in BC. And then I've won the Esker All-Female Cup in Ireland as well.
Solid. Do you have any aspirations to go professional and become a professional boxer?
Yeah, I've definitely thought about it. I'd probably want to wait a few more years, build up my portfolio a little bit more, and then hopefully eventually go pro.
Yeah. What about have you considered like mixed martial arts or anything like that?
A little bit, yeah. A little bit. It's a bit more, a bit scarier, I guess.
Yeah, no doubt. I of course you've been to some. We met at the Lloydminster RCW shows, and I'm sure you got a chance to watch Mitch Clark wrestle. And
Yeah.
Mitch Clark, apparently, he's been in the UFC and stuff. And I'll tell you, I had a match with him once, and it was very nerve wracking because I was like, oh, yeah, if I piss this guy off, he could easily just destroy me.
Yeah.
Like, but fortunately, Mitch Clark is one of the most professional wrestlers I've ever been in the ring with,
Yeah.
for sure. Let's talk a little bit about like the differences between boxing and wrestling. So, how often do you have boxing matches?
There's in Alberta and Saskatchewan, there is boxing matches every weekend, but most amateur boxers box like maybe once or twice a month. It's really hard, especially as a female. There's not a lot of people in your weight class. And so even though I've been boxing for almost 4 years, I only have 12 fights because I've gone, weighed in, nobody's in my weight class. Although I know there is some boxers that box every single weekend, 10 months of the year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm surprised to hear that because I would have thought with it being more. I mean, I don't want to say like you know it's hard for me because like I don't want to say oh wrestling's fake, but like we're taking care of each other out there, like we're
Yeah.
not trying to injure each other. Whereas in boxing, I'm sure you're like trying to knock the other girl out.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
and getting knocked out every weekend is probably not very good for your brain.
Not. And knockouts are not as common in amateur boxing, especially not in girls. It's usually like the big boys, like the heavyweights. But definitely there's lots of concussions. If you get a concussion, it's I believe it's a 30-day suspension or a 60-day suspension, depending on how bad it is. But if you get cleared by a doctor at the beginning of weigh-ins, then you're safe to fight basically for as long as you want.
Okay, so can you talk about that process? Because that's a little like in professional wrestling, like I kind of just go and wrestle if I want to, and my doctor doesn't really have much of a say in it. Do you have to get like checked over by a doctor before every fight?
Yeah, so once a year you get annual medicals, and that clears you just to even be able to put your name into tournaments. And then at the weigh-ins, you weigh in, and then you get checked by a doctor, and they check your heart and your blood pressure, give you like a little concussion check, and then they have to sign off on you being allowed to enter the ring. And then there's also a ringside doctor, of course.
Oh wow, okay. Do they do like do you have to do drug tests or anything like that?
At some of the bigger tournaments, you do like at nationals, you would have to do a drug test. Same with, I mean, obviously the Olympics and Pan Am games, you'd have to do a drug test. Smaller club cards, they usually don't do drug tests. I've never been drug tested, but
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Oh, and what about like do you guys have like promotion for that? Like I know that oftentimes I'll be asked to like do a promo and I mean I'm assuming it's very different. You're not gonna stand there with a guy and be like, well, let me tell you something, Mean Gene, like
Yeah,
uh
a little
do,
bit. Most clubs kind of are their own promoters. Some clubs will get sponsored. I know lots of clubs are sponsored by like fitness brands like Box Raw and stuff like that. And then, yeah, it's more the club has to sponsor or has to promote themselves. And then sometimes
okay.
televised too. Lots of fights are televised.
And do you as a fighter have your own sponsors?
Not really. Our club has quite a few sponsors. Like that's how we stay running. And so I just kind of fall under there. But tournaments and stuff like that, like we pay for, hotels and food and travel and all that stuff. And then sometimes we'll do a fundraiser for the bigger tournaments.
Okay. Well, and do you guys have like opportunities for like for instance, I have my own T-shirts. Do you have like your own T-shirts or anything like that? Like do you guys sell like merchandise at the show? Like, hey, during an intermission, come and buy my 8x10 and that
Yeah,
sort of thing?
somewhat. Like we sell like club t-shirts. It wouldn't really be personalized to the boxers, although I have seen other clubs do that for sure. It just kind of depends, I guess, how big of a name you have.
Okay. And obviously, like you have come out to the wrestling shows. And what about the wrestling shows? Is it that attracts you to the show that you enjoy coming to watch?
Just the crowd, like it's so exciting and you never know what's going to happen, and just everybody's super happy and super pumped to see all these people in the ring, and that's with every contact sport. I mean, it's just so exciting all the time when you get there.
Yeah. So do you guys have like if you're boxing, like do you get like people bursting out into like crowd chants and stuff?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, and it's so awesome, and that's what I love about the sport is you get absolutely everyone cheering for you. And then even if you lose, you still get people cheering for you. Like they're like, "Nice fight." People from other clubs, random people's parents will come up to you and be like, "That was an awesome fight." Like it's awesome.
Do you guys have like I mean we have heels and baby faces. Is there any like boxers that get like booed or anything like that where it's like, oh, we don't like this person? Is that more of a situation where like if you're boxing in your hometown and they bringing in somebody from another town, maybe that person's not going to be uh the most well liked boxer on the show?
Yeah, it's definitely more of a hometown thing. I know we've had boxers that have gone to places like Tabor and gotten booed pretty bad. It's not, I wouldn't say it's as bad as wrestling for booing people, but there definitely is a little bit of that.
Yeah. Is there like specific cities and stuff that are like strongholds for boxing where okay, I'm going to be wrestling in such and such city and they always have a really hot crowd there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. And it's more like in Lloyd, we're the only boxing club in Lloyd, and we put on probably one of the best shows in Western Canada. Like there's usually the crowd's packed and lots of people come. We get boxers from all over the place. And then there's certain clubs in Calgary that also put on an awesome show, and you just know there's going to be tons of people there. You're going to get fights, um, stuff like that. And then there's certain tournaments where you're going to get a huge crowd, like Golden Gloves or Diamond Belt or provincials.
Okay, solid,
Yeah.
solid. Well, because I'm just like so curious about how it works and everything. Because like I know, for me, if somebody wants me to wrestle, they generally get a hold of me and they say, "Hey, we're having matches on this such and such day. Are you available?" And then you either say yes or you say no, and then you arrange to get to the show and go. And is it very similar in amateur boxing?
Yeah,
Like,
for
do you,
sure.
do you get
So
contacted by promoters and stuff?
yeah, kind of. So for tournaments, most tournaments, you don't even have to enter your name before you go. You just show up and weigh in, and if somebody's in your weight class, you get a fight.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
Whereas club cards that like specific boxing clubs will put on themselves, It's usually the coach calling around saying like, "Hey, I have a 14-year-old boy who's at 66 kilos. Do you have somebody in that weight class?" And then there's different experience levels too. So you have to like kind of factor in everything to find fights.
Okay, so did they have different divisions for like experience levels as well? So like not
Yeah,
only are you showing up and you're either like I don't know what the weight classes are divided into, but like if somebody else is in your weight class but they have like 10 more years of boxing experience, is it just like a situation where you're like, oh, maybe it's best if I don't fight this person?
yeah, for sure. So there's 0 to 10 fights is novice, and then so you can only fight people with 0 to 10 fights. Sometimes, like if you have 9 fights, you can fight somebody with like 11 or 12 fights, and the refs will usually let that go because it's not too bad. And then anything 10 plus fights, you're open class. So you could have 11 fights and fight somebody with 300 fights.
Oh
So
wow.
once you get to open class, it's pretty crazy. And then so you have to find somebody in your experience level. You have to find somebody within 2 years of your age until you turn 18. And then when you turn 18, you can fight up to 40. And then you also have to find somebody your weight, and it's 2.2 kilos. So it's like 6.5 pounds that you have to be within the weight of somebody else. So it's pretty, it's a pretty narrow window.
Is it divided into like I know in UFC they have like heavyweights and cruiserweights and junior heavyweights and like featherweights? Is it like is that the how it's divided into boxing as well?
Yeah, yeah, exactly like that.
Oh, okay, solid. Um,
Yeah.
this is all really really interesting stuff. So you've had 12 fights. Have and you said that you have showed up at tournaments and they just didn't have anything for you. Is that like
That's
is it
it's a bit more common in girls for that to happen. Like my very first tournament, we drove all the way to Calgary and I weighed in and there was nobody in my weight class. So it's really disappointing. And they try to make it not happen. Like our coaches will try and call ahead and just be like, "Hey, like, do you know if there's any other girls in this weight class going?" But it still does happen. For boys, I know, like a bunch of the boys at our club, they will show up at every single tournament. They'll weigh in and they'll always get a fight just because they're in a common weight class.
okay? And I'm another thing I'm curious about is like, do you have to foot the bill for your travel to Calgary, or is that something the club will pay for you just because you're not going to make any money as an amateur?
We usually have to pay unless we have a sponsorship for a tournament. Like unless our club has fundraised to send us to a tournament.
Okay, and is that something you personally like get involved in? Like, do you have to? I don't know what that would entail, to be honest. Like, what kind of fundraising sort of stuff do you guys do?
We usually do like, I mean, we sell the beef jerky and fudge. We do those steak nights, bottle drives. Lots of businesses in town will actually just give us donations, which is awesome. But yeah, it's usually a lot of hard work to do the fundraising too.
Yeah. Have you ever done any like wrestling slash boxing cards where there's like matches of from both sports?
No wrestling, but I know that there's it's a pro card in Saskatoon with amateur boxing but professional MMA, and it's really
Oh,
awesome. They
okay.
do it every year. Yeah, and that's
Oh,
kind of the only one where you see a crossover.
and do you have like the opportunity to kind of establish like your character, like you know, like in UFC they had like Ronda Rousey and she was like Rowdy Ronda Rousey, and like in wrestling, obviously, like I'm the Canadian Goose. Like this is not my real name, but like um do you have like nicknames and personas and stuff like that?
A little bit. Some people do. For the most part, you don't really hear that kind of thing. In like the tournament I went to in BC, the all female tournament, there's a few with nicknames, but for the most part, you just kind of stick to your name and you just go in. Yeah.
Okay, so are those people kind of looked at like, okay, yeah, we know you think you're hot, you're hot shit over there with your, you know, the Crusher or whatever your nickname is. Like, is it like looked down upon by the other fighters?
Sometimes, because sometimes you'll see like a 15-year-old boy who's never boxed before and he gives himself a nickname and then he gets absolutely whooped. So then you kind of laugh at those ones. But for the most part, no, you just kind of, that's what gets them in their mindset to box. And if that's what they got to do, that's what they got to do.
That's fantastic. I know that my brother and my stepfather went to like I think it was like some low level MMA card or something one time, and they told me a story about how this one guy had druids and like almost like the Undertaker's entrance, right? And then he got in the ring and got completely smoked.
Oh, yeah. That's always the best. I mean, you feel bad, but it's pretty funny.
Yeah, I mean, I feel bad for those guys because like a lot of work has to go into that, and then like and then of course they're stoked to be there and doing it, right? And the people are generally going to cheer for that sort of thing, but then you get out there and you just get completely walloped. I
Yeah.
mean, that's got to be disheartening. Have you had any like experiences where you got walloped pretty badly during matches?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. There was one fight, the girl, I had more fights than her, but, and she was a bit older, weighed a lot more than me, and we didn't know that her dad owned the boxing club. So even though she hadn't had fights, she had been in the boxing community and boxing since she was like a little kid. And so
Okay.
I got beat pretty bad on that one. They stopped it in the first round, which I mean sucked and it's hard on your ego, but you just kind of have to take it and then go back and train even harder.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's probably better that they stop the fight than just let you continuously get, beat
Yeah,
up because like you probably wanted to come back and box again as soon as possible, which is going to be less likely if you have a concussion.
yeah, and well, I think I was 15 or 16 too, so they always look at like if you're young, they don't want you to get hurt too bad, especially if you're a girl. I mean, lots of fights get stopped as soon as you get a bloody nose.
Oh,
So they,
really?
yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, they like you said, they everybody has headgear and stuff that doesn't protect your nose at all.
No, so the headgear, it's like foam on your forehead and then from your ears back, but there's nothing like right on your face. And I mean, once you've been punched, once you get a bloody nose fighting, I mean, you get them all the time. I know there's boys at the club who sneeze and they get a bloody nose, and it's just how it is. But yeah,
Oh, that's rough. And is there anything that's like illegal in boxing? Like, are you not allowed to punch people in certain areas of the body and stuff?
oh yeah, like you're not allowed to do a low blow. So our boxing shorts, I don't know if you've seen, but they have like white around the waist. So anything
Okay.
below that is a low blow. You'll get called on it, especially if you're fighting a guy. You'll get called on that. And then you're not allowed to smack. So you can't have your palm hit somebody in the head. That's called a slap. And they'll call you on that too. It has to be your knuckles that hit them.
Oh,
So there's,
okay.
certain technique things that they teach you. I mean, when you're throwing hooks, your palm has to be down and you have to hit them with your knuckles. Otherwise, you'll get called on it. And then you're not allowed to hit in the back of the head. And then your number one rule when you're in the ring is protect yourself. So as soon as you look down, like if you're doing a slip or a roll and you look down, the ref will call you on that too because you're not paying attention and you're not protecting yourself.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, that's really interesting. I mean, that's a wrestling thing too. Is like you have to protect yourself. The referee's not going to call you on it if you don't, but your opponent might take advantage of you.
Yeah.
you know, uh, and of course, like it's just one of those things you learn after a little while is just always put your hands up if you've got a chair coming your way or whatever. Um, I don't suppose that that's really an issue in boxing. Not a lot
Usually.
of chair shots going on.
Yeah.
What got you interested in boxing in the first place?
I don't know. I always wanted to box, and there was no boxing club around here. We live on a farm about an hour away, like my parents do. So my mom stuck me in ballet when I was little. And then when I was like around 13 or 14, there was a boxing club that opened up in town, and she's like, "Do you want to try it?" And so I did, and she thought I'd quit after the first class. Because, you go in and it's a bunch of dudes and they're tattooed and they're hitting stuff, and like that's not a place for a little girl, right?
Mm-hmm.
So after I did my first class, I was like, Mom, I want to go back. And I went back. So then she let me spar, but I definitely would never compete, wasn't allowed to compete. And then after I started sparring, she was like, I guess you can compete. And then I lost my first fight. So she was kind of, not disappointed, but kind of happy because she thought that would be the end of it. but it just made me want to do it more. So I kind of just stuck with it. And I know she, at my fight, she has her eyes closed. You know, she's scared of me getting hurt. But yeah,
And how old are you now?
I'm almost 19.
Oh, okay. So you're very young. I didn't know you were that young.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
um, did you like watch like boxing movies like Rocky or like Million Dollar Baby or any Raging
Probably.
Bull or anything like that?
Yeah, that probably is what made me want to do it.
Yeah, some of those Rocky movies are fantastic. I absolutely love those movies.
Yeah,
Um, uh, when you came to the wrestling show and whatnot, and did that give you any like desire to like try your hand at professional wrestling?
kind of, I guess. Like it looked interesting. I don't think it'd be for me. I mean, it looks like you guys get hurt a lot. But it was definitely very cool to watch, and like, you know, I can see how people would love to do it.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and it does hurt a lot.
Yeah,
It's definitely one of those things where you know you have to be kind of grit your teeth and just power through some stuff sometimes. I have a torn ACL right now, which has been real rough. Especially sometimes it gets tweaked, and then you can't walk for like a week, and it's like, oh, you can't walk, so you pretty much can't wrestle either. But
yeah,
like that's just it is what it is, and we just keep on going as hard as we can until we can't. And yeah, um, I'm yeah, if you ever do have any inclination to try it out, like I know that Top Talent Wrestling Academy and Clandestine Society Wrestling Academy, those are the two places where I go to train to wrestle. And they oftentimes will do like weekend mini camps, so you can come and check it out, take some bumps, and run some ropes and that stuff.
yeah.
What is the training consist of for amateur boxing? Like, how often do you go down to the boxing gym and get in the ring with people? And I don't know. In wrestling, we roll around.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Um, well, we just had a break for summer, but during training season practice, our club has practice 4 days a week. If you want to compete, you have to come a minimum of 2 days a week, and then of course work out on your own. And then we usually spar every day after practice. And sometimes, you know, you don't feel like it, so you don't do it. But most of the time, you stay and you go, you know, 4 or 5 rounds with anybody. And then lots of training on your own too. Like I run 3 times a week, and then I do sprints twice a week, and then weights too. So you got to do lots of training.
yeah. I would imagine that it's a very the better shape you're in, the better your odds are going to be to win and not sustain injuries and stuff.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
When you're training and whatnot and that sort of thing, are you training with other women, or are you just training like, because you said that you sometimes fight guys too? Do you have like fights on tournaments against guys?
No, we just like we spar guys. So like just for practice, if you have a fight, it has to be against another girl. But we'll just do sparring. Um, Mostly, like we used to have a bigger women's club team. Like there's more girls in the club, but you know they've gone to school or done other things. So it's, you know, there's lots of guys, but there is a few other competitive girls too, which is awesome.
Was there a lot of issues during the COVID and stuff when did you get shut down, and
Yeah.
did you have to like what was your training regimen like during that? Like, did you just, because like you said you lived on a farm, do you just do laps at the farm? And
Yeah, pretty much. You just kind of do what you can. And it sucked too because, well, there's no tournaments for about a year and a half, so no competition. So a lot of kids lost their motivation to do anything. Um, but it seemed like the restrictions would ease off. We'd go back to practice for a month, and then they shut everything down for another month. So
yeah.
we just, you know, trained on our own, shadow boxed at home, that kind of thing. I was lucky enough that our coach would sometimes like let us in as long as we were alone and we sanitized everything after. Because
Mhm.
I'm pretty close with the coach, so I'd go by myself occasionally, but then you have to sanitize everything, which of course is kind of annoying. But we just did as much as we could.
Did you ever have to do like no fans fights? like tournaments where there was no spectators and stuff?
Yeah, I never competed in any, but there was, I believe, like Saskatchewan did one or two cards where it was no fans, and then even until like June, they had to the refs and everything had to wear masks in the ring and they had to wear gloves. The competitors didn't, obviously, but yeah, there's still some pretty heavy restrictions.
Right. Yeah, I know that for us we had some no fans cards and stuff, and I, especially for me, the Canadian goose who heavily relies on honking and
Oh yeah,
either encouraging crowd noise or antagonizing the crowd so that they'll boo me. Like wrestling with no fans was a mind trip, and it was very difficult.
yeah.
Like, yeah, like, cause like it takes away like half my shtick, right? Like, it doesn't make sense for me to clothesline the guy a couple of times and then go, "Yeah, come on, people!" when there's no people there, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly. And it was really hard on a lot of clubs because if you host a club card or a club tournament, that's kind of your fundraiser, right? Like that's you sell tickets, and then that's kind of what keeps your club going. And so if you can't have any fans, you can't sell any tickets, you know? So it was really hard on a lot of clubs.
oh, that's wild to me that they sell tickets, but you guys aren't allowed to get paid.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean,
how is it that you do have to pay like dues to work out at these clubs and stuff?
yeah, it's not very much a month. I think my fees are $50 a month or $60 a month. And that's like basically unlimited training because I'll do one-on-ones with the coaches too. But to rent a space in Lloyd, it's really expensive. And then they got to buy equipment. And then, like, the coaches, they got to pay to go to these things. And there is usually a tournament fee as well for every
Oh,
box.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh well, I mean, that's wild to me because like I mean, I feel fortunate because like yes, I have to pay. Like I said, I train at the two wrestling schools, and I do have like a monthly fee that I pay each one of them and whatnot. But also, like when I go and I wrestle at the show, at the end of the show, the promoter generally counts up how much money he made off the ticket sales and stuff, and then that gets kind of divided up to cover the cost of putting on the show, and then everything else is sort of divvied up amongst the wrestlers. So, like you always do leave with a little bit of money, or at least you're supposed to, and if you don't, then you can raise a stink and be like, "Whoa, like what are you doing? Like we're supposed to get paid here, you know." um that's just wild to me that they don't have any form of like compensation for you guys.
Yeah, not really. We win. If you win a fight, you get, a belt or some kind of prize, but that's basically it.
And then can that open up doors for you to get like sponsorship deals and stuff like personally?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, like the more you fight, the more you're recognized, and the more you win, the more somebody would like to sponsor you. Um, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, just because I was wondering, like, if you put all this money into it, like, what is your ultimate like goal? Like, what are you looking to get out of your career in boxing?
I'd like to be on the national team. So that, that's kind of a longer process. You have to win provincials and then you have to go to nationals. And for me, that's hard because there's no one in my weight class for provincials in Saskatchewan. And then there hasn't been nationals for 2 years because of COVID. So,
Is there like regional differences between like boxing in Saskatchewan or boxing in British Columbia? Like, is there different rules or anything like that, or is it all sort of unified?
like a little bit, but it all falls under Boxing Canada. Um, and then you can kind of notice, like, wherever you go, some refs like have preferences, but it's not like they are supposed to all follow the same rules. But you can kind of, there is a difference between like a BC ref compared to a Saskatchewan ref, and it's not huge, but as a boxer, you can definitely kind of notice it a little bit.
Okay. And then is there like referees that you're like, oh, I really like this guy to ref the match tonight because he's like a really good referee, and then there's other referees where you're like, oh, this guy's kind of a greenhorn, and
Yeah,
I'm not sure if I want him in the ring with us.
Yeah, for sure. And I've seen refs over the years that it's not a matter of like, oh, I don't like them. It's like, if I'm getting hurt, I don't trust them to like stop the fight. Because if you're getting, the crap beat out of you, you're supposed to have the ref stop the fight. But there's some that just aren't brave enough, aren't big enough, don't know boxing well enough to even like know to stop the fight. So it's, you don't want to get in the ring because you don't feel safe.
Yeah. Do you have are you allowed to tap out or like,
Yeah, yeah. Like your coach can throw in the white towel just like they do in the movies. And then if you're a boxer and you can kind of say like you can wave your hands up or you can say like I'm done or you can take a knee. Like there is ways for you to stop it yourself too. It's just at the same time most boxers have such an ego that they wouldn't stop it
yeah, it's a
themselves.
pride thing.
Yeah.
I hear you for sure. I mean, there's definitely been times where I've gotten hurt in matches, and it's like we're just gonna finish the match, you know. Uh, I had one with heavy metal, and he's such a pro, right? And definitely first and foremost wants to take care of you in the ring. But we had a match, and just like right off the bat, I took a bad shoulder tackle and walloped the back of my head into the thing. And like afterwards, after the match, I was like, "Oh, Metal, I am so sorry that we only wrestled for like 2 minutes." And he was like, "No, we wrestled for like 9, 10 minutes, and you did everything I asked you to do. You did a good job." And yeah, he kept me safe throughout it. He sent me the video, and I was like, just like like you just kind of have to push through, right? Like
Yeah, exactly.
obviously if you can't walk or you can't breathe or you can't like there are situations where I have seen matches stopped in pro wrestling. Even like I was just talking about Metal. I saw him one time. He got kicked in the head right off the bat off a match, and they had to stop the match because he wasn't clear enough to go, right?
Yeah,
Like, and it's always a scary situation.
yeah,
Um,
for sure.
uh, is there like a camaraderie amongst the boxers, at the shows? Because I'm not trying to kill the magic, but I'm friends with most of the other wrestlers that I wrestle, even the guys that like kick my ass all the time. Like we're buddies, and we'll go to the shows together, and talk smack about other wrestlers while we're on the way to the shows, and complain about different promoters, and talk about everybody's. We just there's a lot of gossip on the road trips and stuff, is what I'm trying to say. But is it like that for the amateur boxing as well?
Yeah, for sure. Like within our own clubs, like I mean, the people I box with at my club in Lloydminster, they're my family for sure. Like they're my closest friends. We hang out all the time. And then when we go to tournaments and we see other clubs, like everybody knows each other. I mean, there's been people, our coach has been boxing since he was like 6. So he knows everybody in boxing. And then you see the other coaches and they're all, everybody wants to make the sport more of a community. They want to make it safe. They're all kind of working towards the same thing. Of course, like for me personally, when I go into the ring with somebody before the fight, I don't want to talk to them. After, I'll talk to them for sure, but like before, you got to get in your headspace. And then after, everybody's friends. Everybody's hanging out. Lots of the guys will go for beers together after. Like it's definitely a sense of community.
Okay. Do they have like if you were to go out there with another boxer and you guys had a match and whatnot, like would that person come back with you afterwards and sort of sit you down and be like, okay, here's some stuff you could have done a little better, or here's some tips for you. Was there anything that I could have done? Like, obviously, you're not going to be like, hey, I didn't stiff you on that headshot, did I? Because like you're intending to. But
Um, Not so much, but definitely like after fights, you always, when you're in the ring, when you're still in the ring, right after the fight, you go to the other person's corner and you thank their coach. That's like the very first thing you do. You say thank you for this opportunity, like thanks for letting me box, and then you thank your opponent always. And then sometimes like after the fight, after you're out of the ring, then you'll go and you'll talk. You usually don't give them pointers because there's a good chance you can fight them again. But you say like good job, and yeah.
okay, I mean that seems like fairly similar to wrestling. Like a lot of times we will give each other pointers if so desired, but also like I'm obviously not going to give pointers to people that have way more experience than I do, right? Like, but there is like an etiquette, like there's a backstage locker room etiquette. Like when you get to the show, you shake hands with everybody and you say hello to everyone. And if there's anyone there that you don't know, you introduce yourself. And then yeah, after a match, you always thank your opponent for the match and whatnot. And
Yeah, for
unless
sure.
something goes horribly awry and you're very angry, but
Yeah.
that doesn't seem to happen very often. And then usually, if it does, the person that caused the going awry is apologetic because nobody wants to be seen as like
The bad guy.
dangerous or yeah, as the bad guy, unless like even if they're trying to be the bad guy, like there's times when you'll take it like a little too far and that sort of stuff. But
Yeah.
um you
There's
know
just such like a mutual respect too. Like, I mean, I know how hard you have to work to get in the ring and how nerve wracking that is. And if somebody else is willing to do it, you just say good job. It's just about respect too.
yeah, and I mean yeah, it's one of those things. And I know that like for me, like I was talking about earlier, like when you're getting hit and stuff, like I know that like a lot of people like even me from myself when I first started wrestling, like I was afraid to get hit and whatnot. And now I'm just kind of like, well, whatever, I'll live, you know. Like that's kind of the mindset I've adopted. Like I wrestled Colton Kelly. He was another wrestler, and we wrestled in Calgary a few months ago, and he gave me a spin kick, and I put my hands here to protect my chest because I thought the kick was going to hit my chest, and it hit me here in the face. So my nose started bleeding, right?
Mhm.
And I mean, you're in the heat of the moment. There's a lot of like adrenaline going on, and the referee comes over and he's like, "Hey, Goose, pinch your nose and tip your head back. You've got to like your nose is bleeding." And I was like, "No, I'm gonna wipe this blood all over my face so I look like a psycho." Like, it's a happy accident. I'm not down and out or I don't have to go to the hospital over this. It's just a bloody nose, like big deal. Like is that kind of like the mindset you would adopt in like in boxing when you get like smacked around a bit? Like
Yeah.
just like yeah, whatever. Like do you feel more confident like if you got in a fight on the street or something that you could handle yourself? Like
Oh yeah, for sure. And then when you're in the ring too, a lot of the times, you're in the ring and it doesn't feel real for the first few seconds, and then as soon as you get hit, then you're mad, then you're ready to fight. So it kind of like pushes you to hit them back for sure.
yeah, that's definitely there's I can relate to that too because there's some strikes and stuff in wrestling that we do like the chest chops and whatnot.
Mhm.
Those suck really
Yeah,
bad. Like they
it's
fucking hurt. um so but I like to have the guy like chop me a couple of times and like wake me up and get me into it, like because like you take that and you're like, oh, okay, this is what we're doing. Now I don't have to feel so squeamish about maybe popping you one, you know like
for sure.
yeah, it's definitely this has been a pretty cool like little conversation we've had here.
Yeah,
um
yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, no. Do you have what else do you do besides boxing?
Well, I'm a student. I'm taking my bachelor's of arts in psychology and also my bachelor's of arts in history. And then I also work part time as a waitress, so I'm kind of busy. And then I also have my level one coaching, so I'll sometimes help out coach certain classes. Last year ran my own women's class in the mornings, so I'm busy. Do all
Oh,
kinds of stuff.
okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. So like what are you hoping to like what kind of career are you hoping to obtain after you've graduated college and whatnot?
I'm gonna go into law after. I'd like to be a prosecutor.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you could beat the guys up too.
Yeah. It brings good practice.
Right on, right on. Well, Uh, why don't you tell everybody where they can follow you and whatnot? And do you have any tournaments or fights that are on the horizon?
I'm hoping to get fights at the Saskatchewan Silver Gloves October 8th and 9th. But I just have to find if there's anybody in my weight class. And then hopefully there is.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. And then where can people follow you on social medias and whatnot?
My Instagram is Louise_McCormack 12.
Okay,
And then
solid.
yeah, and then you can follow our boxing club. Our boxing club's Instagram is just Lloydminster Boxing Club. Pretty easy to find.
Awesome, possum. And yeah, I would recommend anyone go check it out because like if you enjoy professional wrestling, you probably enjoy seeing people fight. And yeah, I think that that's wonderful that you came on, and I want to thank you again for coming out to the wrestling shows in Lloydminster that we've had. I've thought those Lloydminster shows have all been really fun. Like the crowds there are they're into it. Like I don't think they get a lot of wrestling going on in
No,
Lloydminster. I think
no.
it
Well,
happens.
was like I watched a little bit of wrestling. I'm not super huge into wrestling, but we saw it on Facebook, like the ads going around. I was like, "Mom, do you want to go watch wrestling?" And she was like, "Yeah," and it was awesome. Like I'm so glad we went. It was just awesome seeing everybody.
Yeah, yeah. I had a ton of fun all three times I've been there, and like even I actually was in an intergender match one of the times I was there. It was me and TJ Cannon against the Viking Lord Vince Austin and Samantha Slides.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
it was an interesting match for sure.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, I'm gonna call this now, and I just want to say thank you very much for coming on the podcast and whatnot. And yeah, hopefully we'll you'll make the national team there, and we'll hear about some big things happening for you soon.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me. This was just awesome.
Yeah, no problem. I really appreciate having you on.
Awesome.
Um, with that said, I am Kyle Shaw, aka the Canadian Goose, and this has been Louise McCormack, and we are here on Love Wrestling, and I will be back in 2 weeks for another episode.
Awesome.
Okay.